130 days ago, that's when the rioting started, and it hasn't stopped. There have been some periods where things have calmed down quite a bit, but Byron York for the Washington Examiner, chief political correspondent, asks, remember the riots? I do, and they're still happening, and they're getting worse. You see, Trump supporters have started holding their own rallies, especially as we get closer to the election. We're probably going to see more of these. The left has been showing up to these rallies and attacking Trump supporters. Now, you might argue that individuals on the Trump side may start some of these fights, but I'm sorry. If Trump supporters hold a rally where they're minding their own business, waving their little flags, and the far left shows up and starts fighting with cops, I'm not going to accuse the Trump supporters of having started these fights or started the rioting. The rioting has been going on for 130 days, and they get a free pass from the media. I saw this tweet from reporter Charlie Warzel. He's a writer at large for the New York Times. He said, "This is harrowing. Personally, post-election violence and insurgency-adjacent behavior from far-right extremists is my biggest worry at the moment, and Facebook is supercharging it. It's so hard to see with everything we know about this, how this has played out with Facebook and violence in other countries, that we are still careening straight into it via the same playbook. As riots continue to erupt, I have to wonder why the New York Times is concerned about far-right violence that doesn't seem to exist. There's no far-right groups going around doing anything for the most part. The only real violence we saw from any militias was the NFAC, the Not Effing Around Coalition, and that's only because they accidentally shot themselves. In the last incident of accidental discharge, fortunately, nobody was hit, but I believe in the other one, that did happen. Yeah, sure, there are right-wing groups, and maybe they're talking about insurgency, or from their perspective, they're probably calling it defense of the country or of some sort. But what do you do when you have 130 days of ongoing riots, vandalism, and how the far left is escalating their tactics, straight up targeting regular cops outside of protests or riots? What do you do? Well, it's no surprise now we're seeing polling from Politico that shows conservatives are now catching up to Democrats in terms of whether or not they feel justified in using violence to support their side. Because for the longest time, they didn't. Well, I should say the left and the right both did feel that way to varying degrees, but the left tended to support it more. It's now inverted. There are now slightly more conservatives, or I should say Republicans, who believe they're justified in using force. And it's kind of obvious. I mean, how many rallies do you have to have where the far left shows up and beats you and attacks you before you finally say we're pushing back? And of course, when these people use their weapons to defend themselves, the left cries foul because the police end up defending the Trump supporters. Why? The Trump supporters aren't showing up to Antifa events and attacking them. Maybe once or twice, but overwhelmingly, 99% of the time, the far left riots, attacks Trump supporters, attacks the right. And the media cries, the far right is the true danger. I think possibly the best example of how broken the media is, aside from the fact that we're doing a COVID news cycle on Trump and all of these, conservatives and Republicans, when the riots are still happening, I think a great example is how the hashtag Proud Boys was taken over by many gay men and supporters of the LGBTQ community, claiming they've reclaimed the hashtags from the alt-right. But the Proud Boys aren't alt-right, and the Proud Boys don't care. They actually, I guess in a statement, agreed with it because they are gay Proud Boys. And the leader of the Proud Boys is like a black Latino dude. They have no idea what's going on. And so they keep pushing this narrative. And because the media isn't properly informing us about the riots and the violence, well, regular people are going to keep getting attacked and there will be no accountability for the far left. So I want to go through some of these more shocking stories. One story in particular where a man walked up to a police vehicle in Portland, shattered the window, and sprayed pepper spray in the car. Or when a mob approached a beat cop, like a regular cop just pulling someone over, they surrounded him, started screaming at him. The driver flees. When the cop tried to flee as well, they jumped in front of his vehicle and then claimed that he ran them over. Medic, they cried. Let's go through everything that's going on. Before we get started, head over to timcast.com/donate if you'd like to support my work. There are many ways you can give. There's a P.O. box if you'd like to send me stuff. But the best thing you can do is share this video. I can't compete with the likes of the mainstream media. And as I often complain, they're not giving you proper context. I mean, I just showed you a New York Times reporter who says the far right is the real threat. If you want to see some truth to the best that I can give it to you, going through all of these different articles with evidence, then please consider sharing this video so that other people can hear what's going on outside of this mainstream media biased filter, where they're not going to tell you that these riots are happening, where they're not going to let you know that a Trump supporter was executed. No, I know. They do talk about these stories, but the high-profile personalities that dictate the news cycle because they're activists in these organizations, the most vocal, these people are hyper-focused on the far right, which sure is a threat, of course, but it's nothing compared to the ongoing harassment and violence and even death from the far left. So again, if you think that's important, please consider sharing this video, but don't forget to like, subscribe, hit the notification bell. Let me first read you this section from Byron York's article for the DC Examiner. He says, even more serious was an attack on a police officer on Sunday morning. A Portland officer was doing paperwork in his car when a rioter smashed a window and filled the car with pepper spray. The officer managed to radio a description of his attacker, who was later arrested in a car that police had been following earlier. Inside the vehicle, officers found window punch tools, pepper spray, throwing knives, a laser pointer, a slingshot, rocks, and more. Police noted, as you can see in the police photo below, it was a whole rioter's toolkit. The packets of Sudicon are for self-treating pepper spray exposure. That's some kind of, I guess, probably an anti-acidic or something, or just, I don't know, maybe like Malox. I don't know what it is. Now, is this person a rioter or a far-left extremist? I can say right now, I can't confirm that outright. I can say that all of these things are a rioter's toolkit. Goggles. Why? To protect you from pepper spray. Sudicon. To deal with pepper spray if you're sprayed. Smashing windows with window smashing tools, throwing knives. That's crazy. Now, there is this weird glasses with a fake nose and a fake mustache. That one's kind of funny. But it does seem like this guy is carrying basically everything these far leftists carry when they're engaging in riots, notably high-powered lasers. But now we can see what goes on. And let's talk about the Trump clashes and the targeting of Trump supporters. What goes on in Portland when Trump supporters rise up and hold a rally? Protesters see disparities after Bend police release man who pointed gun at Trump rally. Wait, hold on. This is being framed as though there's a dispute here. So you mean far left extremists showed up to a Trump rally, a Trump supporter used his gun in defense of himself, the police arrested him and then released him, and the extremists are angry with this. Yeah, I can see where this is going. You see, recently in Michigan, the Supreme Court of Michigan ruled that the COVID lockdown was unconstitutional. So what did Governor Whitmer say? Too bad. I'm going to keep going anyway for the next 21 days because I have a right to challenge this, and then I'll find other means to circumvent this legal ruling. Democrats absolutely are embracing lawlessness. I mean, that's why they're not calling out this violence. It's why they're refusing Trump's assistance to deal with the riots. And it's why the media won't talk about this. Instead, they're like, Trump is sick. And they'll put out all the stupid lies of Trump could go either way and Trump's on this dangerous medication. And Trump gets in his car and drives around and waves. And they're like, now he's putting people's lives at risk. They're ignoring the real threats out there. And that to me is worrying. Violence broke out between pro-Trump ralliers and racial justice demonstrators sharing a Bend Park Saturday when police did not cite or arrest a man who pointed a gun at people. The tense coexistence of groups at the Pilot Butte National Park erupted into a brawl after a 23-year-old man allegedly snatched a Trump flag and ran. Several pro-Trump ralliers chased him down. Some people threw punches and were met with mace and stun guns. Then, a man pointed a handgun into the crowd. Photos and video reviewed by OPB show. City of Bend police confiscated the gun and let the man go. His release sparked outrage among some racial justice demonstrators who said they planned a picnic on Bend's east side specifically to avoid conflict with a pro-Trump rally expected to take place the same day at Drake Park in the center of town. Several demonstrators screamed at police, wanting to know why the officers did not arrest someone who pointed a gun. Because you have a legal right to defend yourself if people are attacking you, stealing your stuff, and then spraying you with mace and stun gunning you. Earlier in the day, police did not take formal action against a different man who was riding a dirt bike without license plates through the parking lot. He popped wheelies near people until he fell over while speeding around a curve, bloodying his elbow. The man was among multiple pro-Trump ralliers openly consuming beer in the park. Now, I'm not going to say I'm happy about that either. Lawlessness is on the rise. Maybe these Trump supporters just don't care anymore because they realized the only way to get anything done in the Pacific Northwest is to, act a fool, get violent, and ignore the law. It's what Antifa and the far leftists and Black Lives Matter have been doing for months with impunity. But fights also broke out in D.C. Counter-protesters clashed with police at pro-Trump rally in Washington, D.C. BLM protesters clashed with U.S. Park Police at a pro-Trump rally near the Washington Monument on Saturday, where Brandon Strzok's walkaway campaign held their unsilent majority march and women's town hall. U.S. Park Police were quickly on scene to quell the protesters and made at least 2 arrests as they detained the counter-protesters. The pro-Trump crowd cheered for the police and chanted, "Back the blue." The walkaway activists had attended a march that morning where they chanted 4 more years, "Back the blue," and USA. It was as speakers addressed the crowd that a small group of protesters arrived at the back of the rally and engaged with pro-Trump attendees. Andy No was able to identify one woman as Megan Mitra Smith, who was also arrested at the Autonomous Zone in Portland. This is at least her 3rd arrest in recent weeks at violent Antifa protests, said No. Now, according to Joe Biden in the debates, don't worry, Antifa is just an idea. Later, a lone BLM activist stood off to the side at the back of the event where she was approached by a Trump supporter who claimed he was trying to engage in a reasonable conversation. A member of Walkaway security team got between the BLM activist and the Trump supporting activist and instructed the man to leave the woman alone. One white BLM supporter attempted to interrupt the gathering by walking through the crowd chanting "Black Lives Matter." He was engaged by a black walkaway activist. This one's kind of funny because apparently the white guy then started yelling "Black Lives Matter" and the black guy started yelling "All Lives Matter." Anyway, I'm not going to read through too much of this because you get the point. The main issue here is that it was not Trump supporters who showed up to a far left rally. It was not Trump supporters who vandalized the Multnomah County courthouse last night. It was not Trump supporters it was not 16 Trump supporters who got arrested just the other night in Seattle. The ongoing violence is absolutely coming from the left. Alleged Antifa activists drag woman holding huge American flag to ground by her hair. I saw this story, and it's just one of a bunch of stories that I got to be honest. You know, it's freaky, but it's not too alarming. You know why I say it's not alarming? Because it happens all the time. We see stories like this all the time. Antifa goes out and attacks a woman. It was a woman holding an American flag that tried stealing her flag from her. She resisted, so another Antifa activist came up behind her, grabbed her hair, and pulled her to the ground. These large groups have no qualms about attacking random people for simply holding American flags. Do you want me to be mad at the Trump supporters waving American flags who are minding their own business? And that's not going to happen. But of course, the mainstream media isn't paying attention to what's going on. So naturally, their whole argument is like, the far right is coming, the violence from the far right, which there isn't any. I mean, there is. Okay, I'm exaggerating a bit. There is, here and there. There's some far right extremists that have committed extreme acts that are really, really terrifying. And those people get arrested and we try to figure out how to stop them. And the FBI gets involved and tries to stop these people. But 130 nights of far left violence and rioting. And what happens? This is the Daily Wire. As you can see, the Daily Wire is not certified as a credible news source. I think this is extremely biased from NewsGuard, but what can you do? You see, this story about an Antifa activist attacking a woman and dragging her isn't going to make mainstream media. It's not going to make the likes of CNN or probably not even Fox News, mind you. It might appear in a reel somewhere on Fox, but this won't ever dominate a news cycle. You know what will? This story. Trump supporter 44 is arrested for sucker punching a protester and breaking his tooth for playing the rap song F Donald Trump during a MAGA rally. Jason Latta, 44, was arrested by authorities in Denton, Texas on Saturday. Latta was charged with assault causing bodily harm after sucker punching Dan Royce Scholler III. The incident happened after Latta reportedly became upset the protesters were playing the rap song F Donald Trump. Schockler was treated for an abrasion below his right eyebrow and suffered a broken tooth. I am glad they arrested this man. In the video, he's screaming at a guy, "Turn it off." And the guy says no, and then he just punches him in the face. A lot of people are like, yeah, well, after so much of Antifa violence, finally Trump supporters are snapping back. And sorry. I hear you. I get this guy's mad. He's probably seen a lot of these videos of the leftists just getting away with everything. And what did Mike Tyson say? I don't know if this quote is true, but he said something like, the internet has made people, has allowed them to disrespect others without getting punched in the face, something like that. And the general idea is we got all these barking dogs snarling on the internet. But then you also get Antifa going around actually harassing, beating, and quite literally killing someone in cold blood. And I can only imagine it's only a matter of time before you actually start getting Trump supporters saying enough and punching some dude in the face. Nah, though, I get it. The game is rigged. The media system is broken, and it's totally biased and unfair to Trump supporters on the right. And the left will argue that I'm a conservative for pointing that out. I think I've given you, shown you exactly what's going on. I've got more for you. This guy should not have punched someone. Okay? Jason Latta should not have punched a guy in the face for playing music. Sorry. You don't get to do that just because the media is biased. You don't get to do that just because you're not getting a fair shake and other leftists keep attacking other rallies. You want to defend yourself, I understand that. In this circumstance, this dude punched a guy. But of course, this is huge news. Don't be surprised when this video goes viral and is used by Joe Biden as the media starts claiming it's the far right that's coming. Look at this. Revealed. Trump-linked consultant tied to Facebook pages warning election will cause civil war. Network run by fake news publishing, father and son, spreads word to Trump supporters they should prepare for violence in November. Oh no, what do we do about these Trump-linked consultants warning about civil war? Oh no. Oh, look what I posted. In response to Charlie Warzel of the New York Times, I posted an image from Mediaite showing about a CNN exchange. You really believe that? Anderson Cooper stunned when Tom Friedman predicts America on the brink of potential second civil war. So let me ask you, if we see some Trump-linked consultant warning that the election will lead to civil war, is this like some far-right promotion of civil war? This is why I think we're past, we've crossed the Rubicon. There's no turning back. New York Times reporters will tell you, it's the far right. They're coming for you. They're around every corner. Oh, because they're paranoid and delusional based on this insane fake news. I mean, let me just show you this tweet. Hold on. This is not the right one. Did I have the tweet pulled up? I don't think I have it pulled up. There's a guy who's terrified. Wait, actually, I think I do. There we go. Ben Tracy says, I felt safer reporting in North Korea than I currently do reporting at the White House. This is just crazy. Okay. First, he says, I felt safer. And that is the red flag. Alarm bells should be going off. Ben Tracy is not saying it is safer. And this guy is with the CBS News. CBS News. He's saying he feels. So what do we get? You get these unhinged, delusional journalists who feel paranoia and are freaking out. Oh, the far right is around every corner. That's what Michael Reynolds said after he killed a guy in Portland. When interviewed by Vice News, the man who stalked and killed a Trump supporter in cold blood said that there were vehicles surrounding him and his friends, and they were armed Trump supporters. They're everywhere. So he pulled out his gun and he shot a Trump supporter twice in the chest. The dude has gone psychotic. He was insane. I mean, you had to be to do something like that. I'm kind of sad for him. You see, the media has been feeding this constant lie of the far right everywhere. They're doing it now. But it's not true. We've seen the videos. There's no videos of the far right going around and doing this stuff en masse. I mean, you have some Trump supporters who have acted a fool, showing up in Portland with paintball guns like morons or punching a guy playing a rap song in the face. These things happen. You can't deny them. I was talking to the journalist from the Daily Caller, the DC riot squad, and they said they saw Proud Boys stomping at a guy. It was brutal. Yeah, it happens. But there's no threat on a grand scale from the far right. They're not going to be marching through the streets in the thousands and the hundreds of thousands. They haven't been rioting for 130 days. I don't know where they are. And if they started acting crazy, the cops would go after them too. They have. In fact, Trump says he's going to label the Klan and Antifa as domestic terrorists. I've stated this before. If 300 Proud Boys marched to my house, I'd be like, what are you doing? If 300 Antifa marched to my house, I'd be like, lock the doors, lock the windows, call the cops immediately. What are the Proud Boys going to do? Show up and demand beer? Look, Proud Boys have acted, like fools before. But for the most part, this is how the game is played. A Trump supporter will hold a rally, and the far left shows up and beats people. Then the media says nothing happened, nothing to see here, or it's unfair that the police didn't arrest the Trump supporters who were holding their own permitted rally for the most part. Trump-linked group. They say the far right, a militia promoting father and son duo of fake news publishers and a Trump-connected social media consultant are linked to pages which promote the idea of an American civil war, with material presented in a way that appears to be an effort to sidestep Facebook's fact-checking system. Comments on their Facebook pages and other materials obtained by The Guardian show that some rank and file Trump supporters are enthusiastically receiving the message that they should prepare for violence against their perceived political enemies in November. The network is comprised of websites owned and operated by Dinah Perazzo, Sr. and Jr., whose company AFF Media is headquartered in Penan Hills, California. The Perazzos run a network, I don't care, whatever. They say the page promotes conspiracy theories and criminal allegations about Democratic Party politicians, liberal celebrities, and leftist protesters, some of which, like persistent claims that Hillary Clinton will be imminently arrested, overlap with aspects of the so-called QAnon conspiracy theory movement. Now, I don't care for anyone who's getting all conspiratorial and claiming, the hammer is going to drop from the Durham report. I think many people are just overzealous. But I think I've pointed out exactly what's going on, right? The right holds a rally, the left attacks it. The left riots for 130 days. The media, ignores it to the best of their abilities. Obviously, I think now the left is ignoring the far left violence because it's hurting Joe Biden in the polls. And what they're going for right now is this message that Trump is weak. But I'd like to show you this. Americans increasingly believe violence is justified if the other side wins. And we have this poll here. This, I think, is the most significant. 11-1-17. Only 8% of Democrats and Republicans felt justified in their violence. By October 2018, there was 13% Democrats who believed that violence was justified and 11% of Republicans. Consistently, Democrats have always been, or I should say, in 2018 and 2019, to be fair, Democrats have been more likely to justify the violence. In June of 2020, it evened out with 30% of Democrats and 30% of Republicans feeling that violence would be justified after the election. And by September of this year, 33% of Democrats and now 36% of Republicans. I'll tell you what, I am not worried about Proud Boys or right-wingers rising up and doing anything. Why? Because it hasn't happened. We haven't seen it. The immediate threat right now is that the far left is attacking people, attacking beat cops, smashing cops' windows and spraying the inside of their car, assuming this guy was a leftist. And the media won't cover it anymore. Like Byron York said, remember the riots? I do. I remember the one last night. 16 people arrested. And that was in Seattle, and the Multnomah County courthouse vandalized. That just happened. Where's the media? That's right. Trump got sick. Better pump out a whole bunch of fear-mongering about whether or not the president is going to die, because that makes them money. The riots are boring now. They don't care. And besides, the narrative is that the far right's the bigger threat, so why talk about the riots? They never wanted that to be the narrative. They were fighting back, trying to defend these people in defense of looting, they said. But now we can see that conservatives are starting to say, you know what? We are justified. And that is worrisome. When you see this video of this 44-year-old Trump supporter punching a guy in the face for playing a rap song, that's gross. It makes me angry. That guy, I'm glad he got arrested. Good. Arrest him. Don't punch someone in the face for playing music. But we can see now that Antifa has acted with impunity for months, and Black Lives Matter. The riots haven't stopped. So what do you think's going to happen? Republicans are finally saying, fine, we'll play your game. If you want to go out for 130 days burning things down and vandalizing property and destroying things, well, now they're saying, fine, so be it. I think the biggest problem we face, and the best, is the division. There's no bringing back these two factions because they don't live in the same realities. You'll watch CNN and they'll make outrageous and false claims. Right now, you've got all of these blue checky journalists claiming that Donald Trump is either faking his illness or his illness is so severe he's on his deathbed. He's faking these photos. Look, these photos are fake because you can see reflections. What? They've lost it. It's unhinged conspiracy. It's paranoid delusions. And it's uninformed, gloating. Take a look at this story. Gay men take over Proud Boys hashtag on Twitter, quote, to reclaim our pride As far as I can tell, the Proud Boys didn't even use the hashtag, and they've been banned for Twitter from a long time. But sure, they want to reclaim the name Proud Boys. Nobody cares. The Proud Boys literally don't care. They have gay members. But this shows exactly what's happening. You see, when you get 500,000 tweets of people saying like, haha, yeah, we owned the Proud Boys. And the Proud Boys are like, yeah, we don't care. That's cool, man. Do your thing. Like, legit, no beef. And then they start laughing about how they've won. It shows you that conservatives know what the leftists are doing and thinking, but the leftists don't know what conservatives are doing or thinking. And that means we are going to see a mainstream media that pumps out bunk information, tells everybody to panic about the far right, when in reality, it's the left that is attacking conservatives. But the conservatives are starting to push back. And so now I'm increasingly worried that Trump supporters are going to start defending themselves at their rallies like they've been with guns. It's only a matter of time then when the media starts painting it as though, see, we were right, the far right, they're the real threat because they're allowed to smear, lie, cheat, push conspiracy theories, and be violent, right? I don't know what else to tell you. We'll see how it plays out for the election, but I'll leave it there. Next segment's coming up at 6 p.m. over at youtube.com/TimCastNews. Thanks so much for hanging out, and I will see you all next time.